Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished leader from the world of technology and a prolific author from Pune, India, Dr. Ganesh Natarajan. Ganesh, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ashutosh. Pleasure.
Thank you. Ganesh is the chairman of GTT Data Solutions Limited, as well as the chairman of 5F World Private Limited. He's an author of 14 books and a regular writer and speaker at national and international forums. His primary interests are in digital success, dual intelligence of humans and AI, and leadership in the corporate and social sector. So, Ganesh, before we talk about all the work, a few questions for you personally. Tell me about your early career and what sparked your interest in engineering.
Well, quite honestly, if you want I grew up in a little village called Tattisilvai, which is 12 kilometers from Ranchi. And the only school that was anywhere in the vicinity which taught in English was this place called Bishop Westcott in an adjoining place, 5 kilometers called Namkum. And it was a very typical Christian missionary school. And the quality of education, sad to say, was nothing great. So I still remember, I think when I was 12 or 13 years old, I heard of IIT for the first time. So I went and talked to my principal, a gentleman called Fitzgerald, whom we used to call Fitzy. And I said, Fitzy, I want to get into IIT. He said, no, let me stop laughing first. I said, why? He said, look, we don't teach you any quality of physics, chemistry, math, biology that we can actually make it to the highest level. So I was very disgruntled. And I said, oh my God, what do I do next? He said, no, you can still get into engineering. And my suggestion to you would be to focus on English language and literature.
I see.
Which he said we teach very well, because obviously being the background of where they came from. So then I realized that biology and medicine was probably not what I was cut out for. And quite honestly, Ashutosh, in those days, your parents would say either medicine or engineering.
I know.
So I chose the lesser of the two evils. So I won't say I chose mechanical engineering by design. It was probably the only alternative at this point of time.
Oh, amazing. Well, I'm older than you, but you're so right. In my time also, it was the doctor or engineer. Nothing else mattered to parents, But my next question, Ganesh, is you've navigated both corporate leadership and entrepreneurship. How do you adapt your mindset when you switch between roles?
See, it's actually been a series. I mean, when I look back on my career, it looks very impressive because, I mean, right from being in Crompton Greaves in manufacturing to running two successful companies, Aptech and Zensar, and then, of course, recently, both GTT Data we built and Lighthouse Communities, which is my social venture. So I don't think it was a conscious decision. I mean, it was all opportunities. I still remember I got my first CEO break when I was 33 years old. At that time, I was running the consulting and corporate training business of NIIT in Delhi and got this headhunter call, and I didn't even take him seriously. But suddenly I was pitchforked into building a very small computer training company. And so even what I did in the corporate world was more entrepreneurial, because I mean, Aptech, or in those days, computer education by Apple Industries, was set up by an entrepreneur. But he was very hands-on on the finance side of the business, which is the financial services business. So he kind of left it to me. So my entrepreneurial stint, which started with a very small startup in 1985, which was to really more in terms of the manufacturing, consulting, and software. And then I kind of gave that up and joined NIIT. But after that, it's been a series of, I think, 25 years as an entrepreneur, both Aptech and Zensar, which kind of we built from scratch. And after that, genuine entrepreneurship, because 5F World was more of my consulting and investment company. Parallelly, we started GTT Data, my wife and I, which was more of a skills company, which now recently got listed on the stock exchanges. And finally, of course, Lighthouse Communities, which is my passion project. I mean, it's really a 5-state, 46 lighthouses initiative to build careers for slum youth, giving them agency, skills, aspiration, livelihoods, etc. So I think the juggling has been, I think, not really, doesn't look, I mean, to me, it looks like a sequential thing, because as I said, I discovered that I could build organizations pretty early in life. And since then, I think it's been one story.
Fascinating. I was also fascinated to read about you that HBS, Harvard Business School, has taught case studies of your work. What lessons from those cases do you think are most relevant for today's leaders?
I must answer this by telling you a story, because I remember I went to Harvard Business School in 2008 to do the advanced management program. and built some very good relationships there, I mean, with the professors. So when I went to Harvard Business School, Zensar was about, I mean, I think it was about 1,000 crores. And I remember meeting this favorite professor of mine, David Garvin, 2 years later. And that time he asked me, how big is your company? I said, we have doubled, David, in the last 2 years. So he was very impressed. And he said, look, if there's one word that you can use to tell me what the story of Zensar is all about, what would that be? And I think I was feeling a bit facetious because having had a couple of drinks on the flight. And I told him it's all about love, David. We built this company using love, which is why our attrition, critical talent attrition in Zensar was less than 2%, using
Amazing.
the industry 18%.
Hmm.
So he said, that's very unique. And how does that work? So I said, why don't you find out? So he was actually on his way to India. So then he came back after 3 months, sent a team from the Harvard Research Center in Mumbai and from Boston. And they wrote this absolutely wonderful case study called the Vision Communities of Zensa,
Hmm.
which has really been taught every year since then for the second year batch.
Hmm.
And it's written extremely well by David. And he kind of brings out this culture of everybody is equal, no hierarchies, and how we kind of built that organization. So I think that was the real, I mean, what the learning there is that look, and it's very, very valid today also, where nobody respects hierarchy, nobody calls anybody sir. And I think in that context, what we built was very special because we really allowed people to find their own feet. And it didn't matter if you were a 24-year-old with 2 years experience or you were a senior vice president, 30 years experience. In vision communities, everybody had a chance to participate, give ideas, and the ideas that were implemented were chosen very democratically. So, which is really, I think, the learning we had from there. And that's the reason for that case study. And then later on, of course,
Yeah.
Professor Michael Tushman wrote another case on Zensar, which was my own journey in building innovation. And innovation has been a theme I've kind of carried forward from AppTech to NIIT, to Zensar, and now to both GTT data and to Lighthouse.
Fascinating. Fascinating. Now I'm going to move to a topic which you seem to have a lot of passion for, which is digital success, dual intelligence of humans and AI, as well as leadership. And my first question for you, Ganesh, is what does digital success truly mean in today's ever evolving business environment?
See, we wrote this book. It's a Bloomsbury publication called Digital Success about 5 years back. And that was at a time, when people were getting a little dissatisfied with the hype around digital. Everybody was talking digital, and digital transformation was the kind of buzzword. But if you really looked at it and kind of looked under the covers, hardly 80%, sorry, I mean, or more, over 80% of the digital initiatives were not as successful as it was touted to be. So people
Right.
would still say, yeah, we've been, every organization is digital and then we are in financial services or manufacturing.
Hmm.
But that was just platitudes.
Hmm.
So we actually went out to research what makes digital not succeed in
Hmm.
organizations. And then we kind of built up this entire model, and that book is all about that. So I think that is really where digital success came from. And today I'm implementing the same thing. I mean, when you mentioned dual intelligence. So GTT data today is all about saying that, look, everybody's heard about the hype around AI. Let's understand how AI evolved,
Correct.
from the data to information to descriptive analytics to predictive prescriptive analytics. And where are we today? I mean, what are all these new generations of, right from generative AI to
Yeah.
agentic AI? What does it
Hmm.
mean? And
Hmm.
our whole thematic again is we're not calling it AI success, but we're saying how the human in the loop and the collaboration of humans with technology will derive future organizations. So I think the theme is let's talk success and let's not get carried away by jargon.
Hmm. Well said. My next question is what, in your view, are the top three enablers for achieving scalable digital transformation in mid-sized companies?
I think the top four enablers, if you would ask me, is one is of course the cliche of leadership, because I think unless there is strong leadership who
Yeah.
believes in what they are attempting to do, it's not going to happen.
Hmm.
The second is processes, because you cannot put technology into a weak process. So my first learning and even my books I wrote earlier was on business process reengineering. And I think business processes optimized to deliver value and not having where the process is flowing in one direction and
Hmm.
let's say approvals are flowing in the other direction. So
Hmm.
that's important. The third, of course, is very judicious choice of technology. Because
Right.
if you just put technology because it's available, it's not going to work. But you put technology as fits into your process or your customer requirement, that makes sense. And the fourth, obviously, is culture. Because even today, a lot of companies have over-invested in technology.
Hmm.
They haven't taken the effort to get people to really imbibe that culture. Because you can talk yourself as being a 24/7 organization, and technology will let you do that. But if your processes and your culture don't permit people to be that, proactive, then you'll still react and you'll still have the inefficiencies that happened in the past. So I think that's really where we are seeing this happen.
What a great response. Thank you. You've also worked with both startups and large enterprises, and of course, Lighthouse Communities, which is a big social impact project. How does the approach to digital success differ in each of these areas?
In startups, and I mean, I didn't fully answer your question on SMEs. I mean, I think the startups is much more complicated because the founder typically has a passion for one area. Okay. And I mean, I do a lot of work with startups. So again, to give you my five-part formula on startups, I mean, you need a differentiated idea.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason for the success of Zensar was a differentiated idea because we really set about implementing what we used to call solution blueprints rather than programs. So you need that kind of a clear idea which you can take to the world. Second is, of course, your ability to market the idea. That's a business model. So if your business model doesn't allow you to proliferate the idea across multiple prospects and customers, you've lost the plot. And then for startups, of course, there is a need to build teams because one founder with a passion cannot take the company very far. Then the need to raise a runway of capital. And last but not the least, to make sure there is customer success, but your customers are succeeding and not just, I mean, you're not kind of building your company on the corpses of failed implementations.
Right.
I think in that context, whether it's for an SME or a startup, I think we have to be very thoughtful about what are we trying to build for the market and how do we take it to market. I mean, as somebody said, the world is not going to beat a path of gold to somebody who has built a better mousetrap. You have to market it. And that's where the Ogilvy method of marketing always comes up.
Correct. Well said. We spoke very briefly about dual intelligence, but I want to ask you in more detail. What is your interpretation for my viewers and listeners of dual intelligence?
See, the interpretation is very simple. And if you kind of forecast what will happen to AI is already, because of the predictive nature of AI and the kind of capabilities that you see today, is able to almost preempt what you will do next. So the risk is, and I was privileged to have a chat with Yuval Noah Harari in New York about 3 months ago, where that was just after his book Nexus, which is written on artificial intelligence. And Harari makes some very startling predictions on saying that if AI moves to what is called AGI, artificial general intelligence, and then super intelligence, which the whole world is scared of, it can potentially take over the world because there is no need for AI to check with you before it takes decisions. So it can drive automation, it can drive healthcare, it can drive whatever. So our point is, and that is really where dual intelligence comes in, that humans have to be one step ahead of AI. So you must use AI. I mean, there is no way anybody can ignore the value of AI in the societal or business construct today. But having said that, you must stay on top. So you must be able to guide, you must be able to define the touch points where there will be human intervention. And that's dual intelligence. So to make sure that you are exploiting the best features, the best capabilities of the technology, at the same time, not kind of relinquishing your decision-making power to technology. So we do a lot of work with, in fact, if you look at our company, GTT Data, it's 30% human intelligence and 30% AI and software, etc. And this interplay between using the best of technology and the best of human capability is really what, I mean, there's a euphemism for dual intelligence called co-intelligence. A wonderful book written on it. So whether it's co-intelligence or dual intelligence, getting both to work together is our concept of dual intelligence.
Fascinating. What ethical principles should guide companies as they integrate AI more deeply into their business models?
See, there are two jargons that are being used nowadays, ethical AI and responsible AI. I think the responsible part is that you don't use AI to violate data privacy principles or even human privacy, because potentially AI can really probe into almost anything because it has access. I mean, all of us have a social exhaust or a social footprint, which makes us very vulnerable to being hacked personally. Because I mean, if you look at Ganesh Natarajan, for instance, and just put it out of there, I mean, probably you'll know everything about the individual. And just give you an example. I remember almost 8 years back going to meet the IBM artificial intelligence folks in Bangalore. And it was interesting, actually. There was a 45-minute chat with them. And when I walked into the room, there were three people, as usual, with their computers open. So I thought, here is one disinterested crowd. And one person was asking me questions. But as time moved on, I found the discussion was getting more and more interesting. So at the end of the 45 minutes, this host of mine asked me, "So what did you think of the discussion?" I said, "Look, I told him exactly what this. I thought initially I was bored myself,
Mm.
but as you went along, the session got more and more interesting." He said, "That is exactly AI at work." I said, "How does that work?" He said, "Everything you said was being was being recorded and sent into the computer. And the AI was prompting us, first of all, about your background. Because he said that before you came in, we put Ganesh Natarajan, and the AI told us that this man will get bored in 6 minutes. So don't go into long speeches.
Amazing.
Ask him questions, engage him."
Mm.
And then every 3 minutes, they were getting a prompt saying, "Ask him this question, let's
Mm.
probe this further, etc., etc." So that was my first experience. Today, when I look at AI in recruiting, for instance,
Mm.
I mean, no longer does a recruiter have to ask the usual state questions of "tell me your strengths, weaknesses, etc." I mean, that is like
Mm.
AI will give you everything about the individual and say, "He asked these four questions. The answers to those questions will determine whether we should make this person an offer or not."
Mm.
So it's kind of very precision that is really happening because of that. And that's really what I've learned over the years. Like
Amazing.
you have to trust technology to take a lot of the drudgery away from your thinking
Mm.
and make you much more capable as an individual because you're using technology.
How incredible. Uh, One more question relating to digital, and then I want to talk about the Lighthouse Communities Foundation. How can educational institutions reinvent themselves to nurture this dual intelligence mindset in the next generation?
It's the question of when you say reinvent, they must also start not only teaching AI, but also using AI.
Mm.
So, for instance, I mean, I'm actually doing a lecture in IIM Ahmedabad on the 26th on leadership imperatives for AI.
Mm.
And the professor of the Center for Leadership, Director Niharika Vora. So Niharika is very keen to open it up to the entire IIM Ahmedabad community,
Mm.
not just to her class, because both she and I believe that, look, people should start using AI more effectively. So to answer your question, like Niharika is doing in IIM Ahmedabad, or I know Professor Rishikesh Krishnan is doing in IIM Bangalore,
Mm.
I think these are entities which are saying everybody must use AI. So there must be AI usage on their laptops or desktops or whatever.
Yeah.
At the same time, they must be, doing research and supporting research on AI. So I think the faculty was so important to get this message across to students and corporate learners will be as important in terms of their own understanding of any new technology, including AI, as the students will. Because students will
Mm.
learn only if they see their seniors and their faculty getting excited about a concept.
Mm. Wow. Let's talk about your passion project, which you spoke about very briefly, which is the Lighthouse Communities Foundation. Uh, Tell me a little bit about the foundation and the work that you're doing.
Well, let me back up on that. So, I mean, if you know, I mean, when Prime Minister Modi first became Prime Minister, 2014,
Mm.
one of the big initiatives that was announced, interestingly, in my hometown of Ranchi, was this whole skills mission and the National Skills Development Corporation,
Yeah.
etc. Now, it's not very public knowledge, but I mean, in the initial phases of the Skills India mission,
Mm.
the results were rather depressing.
Mhm.
And in the sense that, you maybe out of every 100,000 people trained, hardly 12% actually took up jobs. I mean,
Mm.
you send a person for a plumbing course and
Yeah.
give free tea and coffee and lunch. But I mean, this wasn't like enough for them to take up the job. Even if they took up the job,
Mm.
within 6 months, they were dropping out. So the end result of so much of money invested in skilling
Mm.
was not coming through.
Right.
So when I was leaving Zensar, and of course, before that, we set this up as a group of CEOs in Pune.
Mm.
We set up a company called Pune City Connect,
Mm.
which was in 2011. That was 5 years before I left. So we did some research. In fact,
Mm.
we mandated some research and we said, and by 2015, we had kind of figured that, especially when it comes to slum children, which are
Mm.
target audience, slum youth between the age of 18 and 35,
Mm.
there is no way you can set up a training institute, train them on what you want them to learn, and expect them to, well, because there's no really value in that.
Mm.
So we decided to design, and we launched it first in 2016, a very unique model, which is first 6 weeks is nothing but agency building. I mean,
Mhm.
agency, as you know, is a social sector word, which means
Yeah.
building aspiration. So we don't ask the person to decide what he or she wants to do,
Mm.
but they come in and we have a lot of gamified approaches. First give them a safe space, make them dream, give them something called, get them into their rhythm.
Mm.
And once then we start counseling. And then we ask them to choose. So today, for instance, in the city of Pune, we've tied up with almost 30 skills vendors. So giving skills is not the important thing, but giving skills to in a fertile land, which has been irrigated so that it's willing to receive that input is what. So that is one kind of unique proposition of Lighthouse. The second is, there's this trend amongst many social sector participants to say, oh, we'll do it ourselves. What does the government know? I mean, we just give us money and we'll take it forward. We said the government is critical to scale in this country.
Correct.
So, in fact, this first model in Pune was designed by the then municipal commissioner, a gentleman called Kunal Kumar. And Kunal and I actually sat down and said, look, the government has lots of facilities and capabilities, etc. They won't give you money because the minute you take money from the government, then you have all these other problems of tenders and lowest bid, etc. And similarly, don't give money to the government. So we said, let's create a friction-free model. So the model we co-created was all capex by government, all operating expenses will be raised by us, either from large foundations or corporate social responsibility. So this business model has really stood us the test of time. So our partners are the municipal corporations of Pune, Pimpri-Chinchwad Municipal Corporation, Aurangabad, KDMC, which is the Kalyan Dombivli Municipal Corporation. Similarly, in Odisha, we work with the state government. So state government actually has supported us for multiple lighthouses, supported us meaning same model. They provide the capex and we raise money for the OPEX. Similarly, in the state of Delhi, and now we are starting in Lucknow and Andhra Pradesh and Hyderabad. So that model of public-private partnership has really worked for us. So I think what we are now doing, I mean, that's the kind of secret of success of Lighthouse. It works with the whole ecosystem. It works with corporates. It works with other social sector organizations or civil society organizations. And very important, works with government. So this combination has made us successful. We're very hyped up about it. Today we have 46 lighthouses. The goal is to touch 100 in the next 2 years.
Wow.
And really make it, I mean, today if we have 2.5 lakh beneficiaries, the goal is 100 lighthouses, 1 million people trained. We call them the Million Jugnus program. And 1 million Jugnus should have their lives lit up because of Lighthouse. So we're very, as you can see, we're very passionate about it.
Amazing. You were telling me when we a little earlier in the conversation on how the Zensar case study came about and it was based on love. My question is, how does leadership in the social sector differ from the corporate world, and what lessons can both the social sector and the corporate world learn from each other?
My very good friend Meher Padamji, chairperson of Thermax, she has this wonderful quote which I will give it to you. She said that, look, there is much more for corporate leaders to learn from the social sector than social sector to learn from corporate. And anybody who says, oh, now I'm like 58 years old, I have to give back, and now I will go and shine like a light on the social sector, doesn't work. Social sector is also very competent. Like if you look at Lighthouse, my co-founder is IIM Ahmedabad 95 batch. And the management team is full of, very like the current CEO she worked for Infosys in HR and then kind of moved into the social sector. The difference being that each one of them could potentially command a 3 times higher salary in the corporate sector.
Correct.
So doing this out of a combination of passion and money. I mean, we are probably the best salaries in the social sector in our part of the world. So we're not trying to be cheap on salaries, but at the same time we are getting very competent. So I think one definite learning of corporate from social is that, look, get people with a sense of purpose and passion. Anybody who's a clock watcher and says that, look, what is your work from home policy? And a lot of young people ask that question. The first thing they want to do is ensure they don't have to show up in office. No, I'm an old world person. I believe that, look, people have to work together physically as a team. I know in places like Bangalore, the traffic will kill you. But if you don't show up in office, if the whole concept of the team is never going to come through. So that's one thing that I think corporates should learn. And social sector, of course, has a lot to learn from corporate sector on being more professional, because just because you're doing good work for the community is no excuse to not show up on time. I mean, so all the discipline of the corporate sector combined with the purpose and the passion of the social sector, I think that makes for great stuff. And I think even entrepreneurs can learn a lot from that combination.
I have time for 2 more questions for you, Ganesh.
Sure.
If you could give one piece of advice to aspiring change makers, both in tech and in social development, what would it be?
To be extremely humble. Okay, because that's why I was saying earlier also that we all come in with being successful in the past and say now we will shine upon everybody and make them equally successful. But there's so much learning. Every time I talk to a 22-year-old and listen to her story and listen to her aspirations, it's very different. In fact, even on that concept, even mentoring, for instance, we had this old age idea of a mentor being people like you and me, lots of years of experience. But the ideal mentor for a 25-year-old is a 28-year-old. It's kind
Correct.
of just traversed that path maybe 2, 3 years ago and has seen some success. So I think it's important to be humble, learn, and then pass judgment or give your words of wisdom. So I think that would be one piece of advice I give to
Absolutely.
everybody who is a
Yeah.
change maker.
Be humble. What a great piece of advice. And my last question for you, Ganesh. You've played key roles in industry bodies like NASSCOM and CII. How has that influenced your own thinking on tech policy, inclusion, and innovation in India?
I came into NASSCOM because of inclusion. And I mean, that was the time I was CEO of Zensar, and we were doing a celebration of our ISO 9000 certification. And this gentleman called Devang Mehta walked in, and he was a close friend of our founder,
Yeah.
Atul Nishad.
Mm.
So Devang was there. And I mean, Devang, at the end of it, today, when you look at NASSCOM, there are 500 people who stand for election, and it's a very, it's one of the big four monitor that election process. Then you get in, it's quite a process because it's so
Yeah.
popular.
Mm.
But Devang just told me, hey, boss, people like you at the age of 30, 34, 35 should be part of industry building and not just build your own company. So come into the executive council. So that's how I joined NASSCOM. But I was so inspired by Devang in that initial 5 years that I worked with him. And as I'm sure you know, 2001, he unfortunately died in
Yeah.
Sydney when he was hardly middle-aged. But he had a passion that was unbelievable. And the belief that India was unstoppable.
Correct.
We've gone on these tours together where we talked about the Indian story and how innovation is all about India.
Yeah.
And I think that is what inspired me, saying that whether it was the IT committee or the knowledge management committee of CII, which I had led nationally for many years, or being chairman of NASSCOM Foundation, I think the ability to influence large numbers of people. NASSCOM's biggest strength is that all the top companies are part of NASSCOM, and we work in spite of being fierce competitors outside. I mean, in the real world, we're very collaborative within
Correct.
the agency.
Correct.
So I think good associations have that ability to bring out the best in people.
Yeah.
And so I've always had an association track right from 1995 till today, working with organizations and associations to make that happen.
Amazing. Ganesh, on that note, the only thing I can say is that you have so much wisdom and so much knowledge. I could just keep talking to you for a much longer time, but unfortunately, my clock says time is getting shorter and shorter. I want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own incredible journey. Very, as you said, very humble and very modest, where you just so easily shared some amazing lessons. Not too many people can say that they've got case studies written after them at the Harvard Business School. We covered some very interesting ground on digital success, on dual intelligence. And then, of course, I got an opportunity to talk to you about the Lighthouse Communities Foundation. Thank you again for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you very much, Ashutosh. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.